The 2024 Stag Bowl champions, North Central Cardinals.
I've said this for years now, and any good college coach, any good personnel staffer now, because they've exploded onto the scene, you can see confidence on film.
Welcome to the D1 Rejects Recruiting Report, powered by RPO Coatings. RPO Coatings is your retail destination for all things Sport Coat, the brand that has created all the crazy helmet colors across the landscape of football, now has a retail outlet for custom painters and memorabilia enthusiasts alike. The authentic paint product sprayed on your team's equipment is now available for purchase in a wide variety of options, including a specialized line of ready-to-spray airbrush paints that suits the needs of professionals as well as DIYers. For more information or questions about helmet paint, please contact them via DM or at rpocoatings.com. Now, back with Dan Fedrosi, founder of Aaron Consulting, to talk about a really talented Division III football team, some guys out of high school going to join the Cardinals that we'll talk about here shortly, but also to take one step further back into the class list here and talk about the class of 2029.
Crazy to think about, Kobe. We're talking about class of 2029s. And here's the thing. When you really start talking to families and to high school coaches, these are really the classes that need as much education and information as anybody out there. You don't know what you're stepping into. You see what you see on social media. You hear things just through, finding stuff out on the net or just talking to your buddies and just seeing everything out there on social media, and you don't understand what the recruiting process is. So I think this is going to be a really important checklist for class of 2029 players and maybe even parents to get an idea of what's important. But first and foremost, for the class of 2029, you got to think in your mind as this spring, you're getting ready to finish up in middle school, get ready to enter in with your high school team next year. You got to just ball. Your first check mark is to go out there and just get yourself situated and be a ball playing fool on that team. You don't have to walk away with 10, 15, 20 offers as this massive prodigy heading into your high school career to have a great opportunity at the end of it. You've got to go in and set yourself on a great foundation with your high school team, understand the program, learn the buy-in, get all the cultural pieces connected, and then go attack this thing and just embrace that first year. Maybe you play on the freshman team. Maybe you're elevated to JV. Heck, maybe you are good enough to play on the varsity team. Those things are all great, but you have a long journey ahead of you. So just go ball. Go take advantage of that first year, get yourself comfortable, and then absolutely have a rocket ship trajectory off from there.
Absolutely.
Number two, and what comes up a lot right now, obviously in spring checklist, is what camps do I go to? And even as a class of 2029, I'm an incoming freshman. I'm starting to think about going to some college camps. I want to enhance my skill set a little bit. I like it. I would encourage you to camp at your high school, first and foremost. If I have to choose, one day I've got a chance to go to my high school or I've got a chance to go to the Division I camp, I'm going to that high school OTA or practice or team camp, whatever you may have, just to get your feet down in you. It kind of carries down from check mark number one, but you're going to be pushed and pulled because you're going to see the sophomores and the juniors go off and you're going to think, hey, I want to be around these guys. And I like that element, but don't be afraid to stick just with your high school and do the things that your program that you're going to be stepping into in August so that you're comfortable, so that you're ready to go, so that everything makes sense. Third check mark, and probably the most important for all the classes that we've ever talked about. This is a really critical one for the class of 2029. Time is your friend. Don't race through this process now. You have a lot of benchmarks in front of you that are going to be just as important. So many kids are trying to chase the front of that window. We've talked about it with the other classes. This is the one where we can talk to those incoming freshmen and say like, hey, listen, you've got so much in front of you. Not to mention, even if you do hear from coaches, are they even going to be on that staff at the time when this becomes realistic? Coaches move all the time. You've got so much time in front of you. De-stress a little bit. Allow yourself to grow. Don't put too much pressure on yourself that I have to be on the varsity to have this happen in recruiting. I know plenty of prospects that have come through the Aaron family that played on the freshman team, barely played on the freshman team. Then they made their way onto the JV team and they took huge strides. And then as a junior, they exploded onto the scene and they're playing in the Big Ten and the SEC. That is not uncommon. So use time as your friend, develop, don't race through it, and certainly don't put yourself in a position where you're going to get burned out. That is the worst possible thing that can happen now.
And football is in such a great position, I think, relatively speaking to other sports. You look at a sport like baseball that could be quite literally all year round. You play for your school in the spring, you play for a travel team in the summer, then you got fall ball, and then maybe you get a little bit of break into the heart of winter. Football is so great in that you have such a finite amount of games and true competitions, and I think that's what separates it. But looking back at some of your points, I think what stands out to me immediately is expose yourself to that atmosphere, to this group of guys at the next level, and if you are in a situation in a district where you have multiple middle schools, maybe merging into one larger one, get around these guys. Get comfortable with that. Get comfortable lifting in the weight room, being out at some of these summer whatever opportunities you have. And the other piece of it is, who gets recruited, I think, is winners, right? And in order to win, you need to be really good on this high school team. You need to get guys all rowing in the right direction. And I don't think anything sells a recruit and a school more than a winning record.
Confidence is so important. You just said it right there. And I've said this for years now. And any good college coach, any good personnel staffer now, because they've exploded onto the scene, you can see confidence on film. You can see a kid who steps in as a sophomore on the varsity team in week 6 or 7, who gets pulled up from the JV and is ready to go. That can make a big impact versus the kid out there that got thrust into a situation because maybe you weren't even ready, but maybe they just needed you, and you see that lack of confidence. So again, it comes back to that time is your friend element. It comes back to what you just said as far as investing in your program and feel that energy, feel that confidence. The coaches can really see that come through on film. But you brought up something really interesting with baseball, Kobe. The interesting thing about baseball recruiting is, remember now, they have a high school draft.
Yep.
They have a situation where if you're so good at 14 or 15 years old and they've targeted you, could get drafted out of high school. Now, again, we're talking the top 1%, right?
Of course.
But some people that are going to watch this show, you could be a top 1%er. But in the game of football, you're going to play some form of college football. And I know it's a very gray statement now, college football.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, you don't go right from high school into the Detroit Lions. It's going to take time. You're years away. So again, time is your friend. In baseball, you might need to be, identified now as a kid who can throw 91 to think that you're going to be a major league pitcher in 10 years. To play in the NFL in 10 years, they don't even have to know about you. So time is your friend. Gain that confidence, like you just said, absolutely critical. Go and embrace this opportunity. Kind of go have some fun with it. Fun's not a word I use a lot when it comes in the recruiting process because it's a little more businessy, but have some fun as a freshman, as a sophomore, because when this thing starts cranking up and you become a varsity player and you're trying to strive to win a state title, trying to strive to create opportunities at the next level, it can become a little more stressful. So enjoy that time now. Don't race through it.
Absolutely. And then to switch over, let's talk about one of the best Division III programs, if not the best in terms of recent history down in Naperville, Illinois, the North Central Cardinals. They've taken 3 of the last 5 national championships down there. The Cards are having an incredible run. They've sent off some players overseas to play professional ball just recently. I'm sure we'll get into some of the more recent alumni that have opportunities in the UFL and otherwise. This Cardinals team has been red hot, and they have been a very recent history team to just explode onto the national scene in D3.
Yeah, I mean, we sit here and talk about a program to really dive into and say, hey, they've been really well-structured, good success. I said, we got to look at this North Central program and then talk a little bit about some of the recruits coming in and see what they're doing to create this level. I was coaching in the era of Mount Union when they were unbelievably dominant. I've been fortunate enough to be a part of the North Dakota State program before they started this crazy run. This is on par with a run like that. You're seeing Ferris kind of maybe be on that trajectory. I was a part of those Grand Valley programs where they were winning 4 out of 5. But there's some really scary stats that you pull up about this North Central program when you look at just last year alone. They outscored their opponents 788 to 177.
Yeah.
Like that is some scary statistical numbers that you're like, wow, I mean, are the guys they're playing against, are you hurting those kids? You got to start worrying about the other team's welfare at some point. That is incredible dominance. And then you start thinking about, okay, let's dive more into that. What makes that go? And if anybody's ever heard me or listened to this show before, I talk about quarterback play, running the football, and being able to stop the run. At any level of football, you have good quarterback play, you can run the football, and you're able to stop the run, you're going to have a really good chance. So when you think about the rushing stats last year, North Central, 4689 to 1650 on the year in a team that went to the national title and had 59 rushing touchdowns versus 9. So not only are they scoring, this isn't like the Golden State Warriors era where they're just outscoring everybody. Their defense is showing up and shutting people down. And at the same time, you could say, well, maybe their conference isn't up to their standards. And I know their conference is strong. They've got some good caliber programs in there, but at some point you're also getting into the playoffs. And at that point, you're definitely playing really good programs and to have some of those stats. The question's always going to come to how are you going to replace that? You graduate a senior who had 1,233 yards and 13 rushing touchdowns. Your next leading rusher at over 1,000 yards was your quarterback, and he was a grad student. Mm-hmm. Well, the next player after that had about 569 yards, and he was a junior coming back. So is he going to be able to make that jump?
Yeah.
And then defensively, you didn't lose your leading tackler, but they brought back a lot of production from a tackle for loss standpoint. And I think tackle for loss tell a huge number about how much havoc you're able to wreak in the backfield.
Yep.
And you can really set the offense back. You get a team into 2nd and 12 because you get a tackle for loss, and bringing back a kid who had 15 and a half tackles for loss in their third, actually their second tackle for loss leader had about 6. And I actually had to go check. I wanted to do some research, see this kid who had 15 and a half. Is he in the portal? Did he transfer up? And I hope he sticks with them. But that's some really good production that's coming back. So the defense, I think, has got a really good chance to, again, carry them, find that quarterback who can set their tone. We talked about it on the Hope episode. Find that quarterback who can set their tone, but allow that defense to really kind of hone in, lock that program down for a couple of weeks while the offense catches their bearings and fills in for that production. So they got some big shoes to fill. But I think the tradition, the culture, the bar has been set as far as what those older players, soon to be seniors, older players now know. This is what it takes to win. And that's an awesome thing to kind of manifest within a program. I'm sure the coaches are excited about it.
Absolutely. And you said 3 of the last 5, talked about it earlier on. Those are 2 different head coaches, right? For Brad Spencer to be able to come in and keep this thing going in the right direction and keep it on that same trajectory is a lot more difficult than I think some would expect, or some would expect from the outside in. And, they're not ducking any smoke either when it comes to this schedule. You play who you play in the CCIW in their conference, and their game against Wheaton, which is the battle for the Little Brass Bell. It's their big rivalry game against a top 25 opponent, 55-27 in the regular season. That could have been worse, watching that one. And then, your one real out-of-conference opportunity they have to open up the year, they go and they schedule number 13 Aurora. Right? In-state Aurora, different conference. So they're going out of their way to find this competition. Then, of course, you already got on it. Into the playoffs, you're going to be playing quality football regardless. So this North Central team, you talked about it earlier, Sacco, Lanin, those guys, you have to, replicate. I'm not going to say replace, but replicate on the offensive side of the ball, because the matter of the fact is you can't replace Luke Lanin, and that's a guy that has been synonymous. His name has been with this program the last couple of years for great reason. The 2-time Gallardi Trophy winner who now has an opportunity with the Arlington Renegades in the UFL, man. That's pretty neat.
It is, and that's going to be tough to replace, but you made a really good point as far as when you lose a coach because of that kind of success, someone steps in and you continue to keep it going. That's a testament to the players. Everyone's always searching for that. What's that culture piece that we can put within our program at high school teams and college teams, heck, even pro teams all over the country? What's that piece that we can find? What's that one fancy statement that we're going to put up on our walls that's going to make these kids buy in and help us win year in and year out? When the players have that kind of buy-in, that a coach can change, positions, you can bring somebody else in. That's a huge testament to the kids, and that's going to be hard to break. So I think this team's really set to continue it. But again, it's not going to be easy because you're everyone's Super Bowl now. Now it's some, and they're not climbing the mountain anymore. They've been there for a while. But I think back to my days, or in some of those programs I had, we were kind of climbing the mountain. There's some fun, unique challenges about that. But sometimes people dismiss you on the way up the mountain, right? They're never going to make it. And then you make it and they're like, ooh, okay, we got to get going. I think about some of those really good GLIAC teams that maybe even I coached against or played against and coached against. Think about Ohio Dominican. They're no good. Just some little small, private school down in Ohio that just joined into the GLIAC. And like 2 years later, they were winning the league, battling against Grand Valley year in and year out for the conference championship. So the thing about being at the top now, everyone's going to take you very serious for the last few years. You're getting everybody's best shot. That can be a fun challenge too, but that can be a different kind of challenge.
And that flips quickly. You talked about Mount Union earlier on, and they were very much in that boat for a long time, and now it is the Cardinals very much in those shoes. But now, time for a deep dive into the next generation of playmakers going to play for North Central, sponsored once again by RPO Coatings. Take your next project to another level of authenticity by using the exact paint colors, clear coats, special effects, and more of your favorite teams by visiting rpocoatings.com today. Check them out on Instagram at RPO Coatings. And to get into this list, we talk about having to replicate some of that success, some of that production. How are they going to do that with this incoming class?
Yeah, I found a couple guys that I thought were pretty impressive. But again, I was excited to say, okay, what is North Central recruiting that's creating this level of commitment? And I think as we talk about Dane McGuckin out of Lutheran High School, actually out of Colorado. So you're talking about a program that's able to expand their brand and go find some kids, maybe even nationwide. That's what happens when you have a level of success. Extremely active and powerful at the line of scrimmage. We just touched on it. If you want to have success year in and year out with an offense, lose a two-time Giardi Trophy winner, you're going to have to replace that at some point, create some havoc at the line of scrimmage. On his film, he shows the ability to punch, extend, disengage, and make tackles. And what you're seeing is that offensive line is going backwards. Now, can he develop into a pass rusher? Because what I saw, I'm not going to use the word plugger, but I saw a much more, 2025 ready player that can play within the gaps against the run. But
Sure.
Is he going to be able to really put pressure on the quarterback? Is he going to be able to dip? Is he going to be able to rip? I think there's some explosiveness that is going to need to be gained in there. But for a team that wants to stop the run and have that kind of success, I think I would lean on this. So, it's always kind of like sexy to find that guy who can rush the quarterback and dip the edge. That looks really cool on film. And I think as coaches, sometimes we get attracted to this, but you need a kid who can set the edge as that guard's trying to reach him at a 3 technique, who cannot get moved off the ball and can then make that tackle on the line of scrimmage, makes your linebackers' lives a lot easier. Very impressive on him. Got kind of that game wrecker potential, but he's going to have to really improve in the strength conditioning program, grow, develop, get a little more explosive, a little more quick twitch in the pass game. Didn't see a lot of that. Be interested to see what kind of growth and development he can do as he joins the program.
Yeah, nothing worse from the offensive backfield perspective than seeing your pulling guard get blown up in the backfield and then the rest of the play is absolutely disrupted. And more oftentimes than not, that's not the defensive end coming in, right? That's someone, you got someone in a bear front or coming off the, inside tech and they're just reading the play, following the hip and just blowing that up in the backfield. So you talk about run game on both sides of the ball being critical at any level of football. Bringing in a guy in that offensive backfield, what kind of impact can we expect from Jordan?
Yeah, Jordan Wandick from Andrew High School down in Illinois. I was pretty impressed with his vision. We actually watched a corner when we were kind of deep diving this program, or we were deep diving a lot of small college programs during the season as they were on their run. And they had a corner who showed a lot of the same skill sets when he was carrying the ball. Good vision, good ability to read blocks and make cuts. I see that from Andrew. And the really cool thing is he plays in almost like a single wing, does a lot of jet motion as a part of that offense. I wouldn't exactly call it veer, but they're handing him the ball in multiple different ways, but he can run between the tackles. That tells me vision. Then he can get out in space. Again, that tells me vision. You even see him athletically on a wheel and catching a ball, high pointing the ball. Maybe this is another one of those players that they just want to get that athleticism in there. Heck, maybe even turns into a corner. Vision is so critical in the game of football. You're navigating 21 other people out there. And you've got to be able to avoid, you've got to be able to read your blocks, you've got to be able to run fast. Jordan, I thought, did a really nice job of that. I was really impressed. Where will they play him? Is he a guy who's going to carry the football 20 or 25 times? Not sure if I see the explosiveness and the breakaway quite yet, but heck, again, if they have the ability to take that skill set, just a ball playing fool, maybe put him out at corner. I could even see him almost as an alley or a safety player too. He looked to have really good size. Intriguing prospect. I think this is one of those players that's going to find himself somewhere in maybe one of like 7 positions, including on both sides of the ball.
Stay on the offensive side of the ball. Now, though, to the front 5 with Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis Dracup from Morton High School. We got to talk about some offensive linemen, and that's been a staple from all of our recruiting reports. But what was really unique about Dennis, there was so much pulling on his highlight film. That was exciting to me because there's athleticism that comes along with that, but that's not an easy skill set to learn when you're in college. Like sometimes you watch these players, especially if they're down blocking and it shows the power, or they're working combos and it shows athleticism to work the combo, but then come off. The reality is you're going to work so much of that in college. That's the easy part. But to pull, to show some of those skip pulls, to show him getting out in space, I thought was really impressive. So the coaches at North Central are not going to have to worry about, does he have the athleticism to pull? What they're going to have to work on with him is going to be his explosiveness at contact as he's moving. He gets to people and he moves them, but I think he's got another level of being able to snap on that contact, on that movement. But I would take this level of baseline work first. A kid that can pull, a kid that can move, I can then take and have him be more explosive when he gets to that second level linebacker, or maybe even pulling out to a safety. I was pretty impressed with his film. I think there's a huge ceiling. Now, I even could see, sometimes you just notice Could he play out at tackle? That athleticism just gets me excited and start thinking like this kid that can pull could also maybe be a kid that could kick side and maybe play one of those tackles. I'm not saying he's going to be the starting left tackle, but maybe he can grow into be that third tackle, that swing guy like we've always talked about. He just seemed to have so much value, and that athleticism was so critical to me, recognizing that. I bet the North Central coaches are excited for that too.
100%. And to finish things off, on the defensive side of the ball, an outside linebacker out of Rockford Lutheran.
Yeah, John Behmer out of Lutheran. And I think he's got a brother on the program, unless they just have the same last name, okay. A brother or a cousin. I noticed somebody on the site that was recognized as one of their academic accolade student athletes. So I'd like to deep dive into that and see if he's got a relative or maybe a brother playing on the team. But what was another very interesting prospect was how much he did. He lined up at receiver. He lined up at outside linebacker. He's playing with a club on at times, and he's doing physical attributes, getting off blocks, making tackles, snapping on that contact in space with a huge club on. Ball playing fool, just enjoys playing the game. And the reason I think it's great we're ending on this guy, this is how you find a way to win 3 out of 5 national titles. You find kids who believe in the game, believe in their skill set, and just want to develop and want to ball. And I think there's indications on watching these 4 players alone, because their team's got to be made up of guys just like John, just like these players that we've talked about that just want to go out there and play and want to learn and have obviously skill sets. There's no doubt about that. But when you see what John was doing out in space and his athleticism and his ability to do multiple skill sets, obviously that's what North Central likes to see in a team. And that's what's got them to 3 of the last 5 national titles. So John, I think, fits everything that they're probably looking for. Where will they play him? He looked to me like almost a premier outside linebacker, somebody who can play in space. Not sure if I saw enough where he could spin down, started to safety and spin down, kind of like what your brother did. You know, to be able to do that takes a skill set, and you got to see it. But man, he could maybe do something on the offensive side of the ball. Heck, who knows? Maybe he could carry the football in a 3rd and 1 situation when they need it. He looked to have that kind of skill set, and he looked to just enjoy playing the game. Those kind of players find a way on the field and help you win a lot of national titles. So I think there's a huge upside for this program based off what they're bringing in. I can definitely see why the culture of that program is so good.
Amen. Confirmed brothers, by the way.
There you go.
Pretty neat deal. Family affair
awesome.
Down there in Naperville. That's awesome.
Yeah, very good. Awesome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for the insight. And once again, rpocoatings.com. Visit them today. Check them out on Instagram at rpocoatings. Coach, once again, man, really great insight. Really incredible program to highlight. That's part of the layup of the episode. I mean, talk about the cards, man. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, I mean, for anybody that watches this, you know, this is the staple that you want to follow as far as if you're a student athlete, if you're a young aspiring high school player, watch some of these kids go in there and then watch those seniors. I mean, you got grad students littered amongst that program that had great careers. You talked about a guy winning the Gagliardi Trophy 2 years in a row. That kid was there for as a grad student. Commitment, buy-in, but go cut it loose and become a great player within your high school team and allow these opportunities to come in. This was an unbelievable program to finish on. There were some really good prospects in there. That team ain't going to be easy to beat next year. So for everybody lining up against the Cardinals, you're going to have to bring your A game. And I'm sure people will, but those players are really good and this program's incredible. I enjoyed talking about them.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your night. Appreciate you.
Yep. See you, Kobe.